Okay, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me okay? Thank you all for coming out. Chris and I are here for the last presentation on the last day, and we have the trifecta. We get to talk to you about security. So we have 45 minutes until the bar opens. We will try to keep you entertained for the next 37 and a half, and then you can leave and walk right out the door. My name is Bill Baldwin. I am a global enterprise support lead for AWS, and this is...
I'm Chris Schramm. I'm a technical account manager.
And we're going to talk to you today about security. So today we're going to talk about 4 things, and we've divided this up where the old guy gets to talk about traditional security, and the young guy is going to talk about cloud security. But then I will talk to you a little bit about GuardDuty, and then we'll have Chris wrap it up with a little bit on what is DevSecOps, okay? So in the on-prem world, okay, how did we deal with security? How did we have security in the on-prem world? How did we secure things back then? We had to choose. We either would stay secure or we would move fast. And if you know, in AWS, we like to move fast. It's not that we're not secure. We like to move fast. And in the old days, we had to choose between one or the other. We used to have firewalls. These would separate the good traffic from the bad traffic. We would set up a firewall that was the barrier, the traffic cop, between the things we held near and dear to us that we had internally on-prem and the bad things that were outside on the internet. Good traffic in, bad traffic on the outside. We started off with the concept of a packet filter. Simple packet filter. Allow TCP port 80. We can do better than that. Let me make sure everyone's awake. How about allow TCP port? Somebody said it louder. There we go. Allow TCP port 443. All right, so at least we've got, I know I've got one person. Okay. So allow TCP port 443. That was simple. That was in the days we created a packet filter. This can come in, that can go out. It was very simple. Oh, too many. We came up with stateless filters. Okay? We got a little sophistication. We put a little CPU. We got a little sophistication in our firewalls, right? This would segregate our traffic. We came up with the concept of having DMZs, right? We had the bad traffic on the outside. We have a little area where it's not quite bad traffic, but we allow some things to come in, some things not. We could segregate these things off with these devices, with these firewalls. We would block things. We would allow things. We started to inspect the traffic going back and forth. Life was really good. We loved our firewalls. At least we thought we did. We came up with new kinds of threats that started to invade us. We had malware and virus attacks coming from internal sources. And then DDoS attacks would bring our firewalls down. They would bring our systems down. Of course, we came up with new ways to protect ourselves. Virus detection, malware detection. We came up with intrusion detection systems, intrusion protection systems. We came up with the next generation of firewall that blocked traffic at layer 7, application protection firewalls, and then we even started getting into DNS protection. Entire systems now designed to help protect us from the bad things that were on the outside. Okay. Pardon me, we're a little touchy on my clicker here. What were some of the problems with this? We had limited automation in the way we were doing things. We'd have false positives. We'd have people being blocked from what they were being able to do based on all these complex systems that we had put together to protect our on-prem world. It was a very reactive system, not enough automation to get to where we wanted to get to. Security started getting complicated for us, and we started to become the no department. We started to put the no into innovation. So then we hand the clicker over to Chris, who's the cloud.
Great. Thanks, Bill. Thanks for that. So we're going to talk a little bit today around cloud security and how you can do this differently. In the cloud, we can move fast and we can stay secure. So we'll talk through some examples on how we can do that. So before we go there, let's talk a little bit about what we've done in the on-prem. So a lot of you, many of you are probably familiar with these concepts. We've got, on the detect side, we've got things like NetFlow logs. We're probably looking at Active Directory logs. We've got our Insight, we've got IDS logs. On the infrastructure side, we've got services like firewalls, IDS, IPS. Many of us have probably touched these. And on the response side, we may have used some sort of incident response software, some sort of management software to respond to incidents, or perhaps just some scripts. I usually had my scripts under my desk, but nowadays you can put that on server. Now, in the AWS world, there's some concepts that we can apply. So for example, like VPC Flow logs, but there's some things that are quite unique to the cloud. So for example, with CloudTrail is a holistic, it's an aggregation of all your API calls that are occurring within your AWS account. And it's quite unique. You don't really have this necessarily in the on-prem world because...
Yeah, what would I have if in the on-prem world, would I have an analogy to CloudTrail?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of times you could build it. You could get API call events per stack, per service. But if you're going across your entire environment, you'd have to build all this. So it can be quite challenging. And there was really no guarantee that you had all your insight across all your services. Because if you build it and you add a new service, you may not have that insight. With CloudTrail covers everything. So every API call, all your events, across all your regions, you can see that within CloudTrail. So that's important. And so we're going to talk about that here in a little bit further. Now with CloudWatch, it's your monitoring. Think about it as your monitoring for your environment. You've got performance for your AWS services, performance for your applications. Now on the infrastructure side, we've got things like VPC. VPC really is, think of it as your virtual network. It's your fence network within your AWS account. It's isolated to you. And we've got a service called GuardDuty, which Bill's going to talk about a little bit deeper as your security event analysis system. And with AWS WAF, we have our web application firewall. And with AWS WAF, we can protect against DDoS threats and bots. And we'll talk about that a little bit further here. The one thing I want to bring over here is AWS Lambda. Now, with Lambda, it's our serverless compute. Effectively, you're not having to manage servers. You're not having to manage that server in your environment or on your desk. And you can run code. You're basically executing code. And in this case, with security, we're going to use it as an event response and to trigger that Lambda function. Now, Lambda is, like I said, it's really, really great because you just do the code, you put it in there, and you pay just for what you use. So if you've got that Lambda function that runs, say, once a day, it runs for 2 seconds, that's what you pay for. Now, with config rules, we can get insight into our AWS resources, so we can audit changes to our, say, instances or AWS resources. And config will actually audit, it'll have a historical log of those changes specific to your resources. So let's talk through, we're going to talk through a threat lifecycle here. We're going to talk about, let's say we've got an EC2 instance, and this EC2 instance, virtual server, just appears, and we're not sure what's going on there. So let's talk through that cycle. We want to understand, what is this instance? What is this doing? What should I do? So we'll talk in the cycle from monitor to response and to remediate. So we need a monitor, because if we don't have the insight, how do we know what action to take? We may not necessarily, it may not be a bad actor necessarily. So we're going to go through and enable our logs. We're going to go through and enable CloudTrail. Now, CloudTrail by default is actually enabled, but let's say your forensics team or your security team, let's say you want to have their own set of logs just for them. So we can create a separate log just for them that they can view. We'll go through enabling VPC Flow logs. And VPC Flow logs, again, they're like NetFlow logs. It gives you network activity. So from a ingress-egress perspective, we can see things like source, destination, and we'll go through that as well. And of course,
let me ask you, just so that I'm clear on that, is VPC Flow logs a subset of CloudTrail? If I enable CloudTrail, does that mean I get all these network things, or are these two separate things?
These are all three separate concepts. So think of CloudTrail as API activity, think of Flow logs as network activity, and think of CloudWatch as all the resource event and monitoring for your resources. All very critical, but all unique and all different.
Okay. Makes sense.
So let's go through that. Let's create a new CloudTrail log. And what we're going to do is we're going to enable this log. So we want to have the insight, and we're going to enable this for our security team. So we go to the console. We go into there. We go to create. And then from there,
let me back you up real quick, Chris. First off, I wish my screen were that big. Again, I'm the old guy with the gray beard. If my screen were that big, it'd be fantastic. Am I doing this for my whole organization? Do I do this on an account-by-account basis?
So you'll enable your CloudTrail per your account.
So per account, I go in, I
account.
turn this on,
Yep.
and I think you said something about 90 days?
So by default, you get 90 days of visibility into your CloudTrail,
Okay.
and you don't have to enable it. The reason we're enabling it here is we want to put this into a bucket to actually view those events and analyze those events, where by default, you can just view these events within the console.
Gotcha. And this bucket, that's a, where is that? What do I?
S3 bucket. So
S3. I've heard of this thing. I could have sworn I've heard of this thing called S3. S3.
And what's good about that as well is within your S3 bucket, you can put a lifecycle policy. And what that means is, let's say we don't want to keep our logs past 100 days. Well, you can do that. You can set a policy on your bucket and say, after 100 days, please remove these logs.
What if I want to keep them after 100 days, but I don't necessarily need to get to them?
If you want to keep them after 100 days, you want to get to them. Well,
Could I put them in Glacier?
you can put them in Glacier.
There we go. I can put them in Glacier. So I can keep them. So I can say after 100 days I could delete them.
can delete
after
them,
100
or you
days
put
I
them
can
in
put them into Glacier. Maybe a little cheaper to store them with. That's pretty
Exactly.
cool. And I just go in here and turn it on.
Just turn it on. And again, it is enabled by default in the console, so you can see the API events, but we're just trying to get additional logging for our security team. So let's go to enable that. So you have some options. Give it a name. Do you want to enable it for all regions? I would suggest yes, because we want to see all the insight. We want to see all the activity across all our regions. And then from there, let's validate that we've actually created the trail. And we can see the bucket that it's stored in. Remember, you can put a lifecycle policy in your bucket. And we've got the actual trail name. So from here, let's go validate an event. Go into your console, sign in, do something. And you'll be able to validate that actual event with CloudTrail. And one way of looking at it is in the console on the left-hand side. Now, if you want to get additional detail, or let's just say you're comfortable with the CLI, you can go into the CLI and actually view that event in JSON format. And from here, we can see a lot of activity. We can see that someone deleted a bucket. We can see that what region it was actually occurring. We can see the date and time. And this, on the right, is actually just a subset of a lot of additional information that you can see within CloudTrail. So imagine all the API calls being logged with this level of detail that you can analyze.
So I could write some sort of system or buy some sort of system or create some sort of analysis,
Absolutely.
something that looked at these on a regular basis, continuously monitored them and
Absolutely.
looked at them and then did something.
Yep, exactly.
But this isn't, what I just did doesn't do that yet, though.
No, all we've
I'm
done
doing
is
story.
we've aggregated the insight for CloudTrail logs at this point. So
Okay.
we just have all the events that have happened. So we've got CloudTrail enabled. We've got our logs coming in, and it's for all regions. Now, VPC Flow logs, again, going back to that network ingress, egress activity, we want to get that additional insight, right? The goal here is to get the most insight so we understand what's going on in our account. So you can enable VPC Flow logs at the VPC layer, at the subnet layer, or we can get very specific to the actual ENI, the Elastic Network Interface for that server, that EC2 instance. So from here, we're going to go ahead and enable that. And the example that I have, it's specific to the actual ENI. We're going to go into our console. And keep in mind, VPC Flow logs are not enabled by default. So we'll go into our console. We'll create the flow log. And then from there, we have a few options. We can say, I just want to see accept traffic, or I just want to see traffic that's rejected. In this case, I've selected everything. And we set the right roles. We've got to have the right roles and the permissions to view this information.
So let me ask you a question then on that. So it looks a little different. Same type thing. So the CloudTrail stuff, I was monitoring my API, but I either turned it on or turned it off. I couldn't say I want to just see this stuff, that stuff. On this, you're telling me that when I turn it on, I have degrees of turning it on now. So
You have some control here in terms of what
control.
you're capturing, yeah.
Okay.
Mainly around accept and reject.
The same thing is just going to put it into an S3 bucket?
S3 bucket, you got it. You got
and
it.
then if I don't want to keep it,
You can lifecycle it out. Put it to
Okay.
Glacier if you want to put it for long-term storage, or you could just remove it. Now, we'll go ahead and create the group. And then from there, we can just validate the flow log ID. So within your console or within the CLI, you can actually do a quick verification of our flow log ID. And let's go verify an event. So maybe spin up a server or an instance, or maybe you can just run a quick ping command.
so if I did that packet filtering and I allowed TCP port 443, okay, I would see that in here.
Yep, here we got port 80 actually.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh. Same thing. So
But-
TCP port 80. So now I can see the traffic coming in there, where
Yep.
it came from.
And so here we can see we got source, we got destination, We can see whether the actual packet was accepted, was it rejected. So you get some granular detail here as well. I've abstracted out the account ID, but you also see the account ID. You can see the specific ENI or subnet if we were doing this on a subnet. But now we've got some network insight at this point. So we've got API activity, we've got network insight, and remember, CloudWatch is enabled by default.
Yeah, let's say that I didn't want TCP port 80, right? Then I could look at those things, monitor for those things, right? And then now respond to it.
We can see the, exactly. So we can see that activity, and let's say we don't want 80, and we're seeing that 80 activity. Now we can actually have that insight and take the appropriate action.
Interesting.
So let's walk through. So we've got this EC2 instance. We've collected all our logs. We've got CloudTrail. We've got all these things enabled. But we still don't really know what's going on with this mysterious EC2 instance. So, and ultimately, based on that, we want to see things like, we want to know whose instance is that? What do I do with that? Who should know about that? These are all questions that we have. So we're going to take this example. At AWS, we always say, never use your root account. Never. Well, how do you validate that?
But my root account can do everything.
Exactly.
I know.
So how do you validate that? We say, don't use your root account, but how do you know if it's being used or not? Well, in this example, what we've got the insight from CloudTrail. We're going to push to a CloudWatch event. And remember Lambda, serverless, you pay for what you use. If you've got your own custom code, you plug it in there. So we're going to push it to Lambda. We've got a function that we've created. And from there, we're going to send it to SNS for notification. So our notification service, you can send an email out.
So let me dig into you on that. So I got those CloudTrail logs.
Yep.
And there was an API that said somebody logged in with my root and did something. And then you set up a CloudWatch event that looked for that.
We're looking for that specific
You're looking for that little thing,
API
and then it
activity.
fires something.
Correct. So CloudWatch event says, this matches, this API activity matches. I'm going to send it this Lambda function that you've predefined. From there, this function is very simple. It's just notifying. You can do a whole lot of other things with Lambda. If you can probably think of it, you can probably code it within Lambda. So we've got the notification. So now, once we've enabled that whole cycle and we've got that email, we can actually see a lot of detail. Again, remember that example on the right? You can see all that detail. Well, we got an email here. So we can see this instance was a root call, which we don't want. We can see the specific security group that it was impacted by that. We can even see the key name. What key name were they using when they fired up that instance? What was the actual instance? Here it's a T2 micro. And we can even see the region. So you get a lot of rich granular detail there. But now we can actually respond to that. So we've got the event, and we can notify somebody saying, hey, this happened. So let's do something about that. Let's say that instance was not an instance you wanted. What do you want to do with that? Let's say it was a bad actor.
It's not enough just to email me, and then I'll take care of it?
If you want to keep Bitcoin mining, go right ahead.
Or be woken up at 3 o'clock in the morning with an email or a page saying that something bad happened?
So let's remediate that. Let's do something about that. Again, we're using Lambda because it's very customizable. And we're going to take that instance, and based on any sort of root account activity, because we don't want to have any sort of root account activity, we're going to isolate that. So we're going to, again, trigger a Lambda function, take that EC2 instance. We don't want to delete it necessarily, right? Like if we're in security, we want to be able to understand, do the forensics, see what happened there. But we do want to stop the threat immediately. So let's put that into a security group. This other security group doesn't have any ingress or egress. So we fundamentally have blocked this off. So we can go back later at some point and investigate and see what happened.
So you're telling me that this bad thing happened. I'm a sysadmin, and normally I get paged at 3 o'clock in the morning saying something bad happens. And then I go to my laptop, and I connect, and I do something about it. You're telling me that you can write a little function that will intercept that bad thing that happened, automatically isolate the instance, and I don't need to worry about it till tomorrow morning?
You might get paged the next day for something else, though. But yes, exactly.
It sounds like magic.
Exactly. We can, if we understand the API activity that we don't want to see, we can prepare for that. We can put things in there. We can put those rails in place to say, do this action, and I don't have to get paged.
Fantastic.
And I kick it over to forensics and let them deal with that.
And you hand it over to forensics and said, I took care of it, you go take care of this.
So that's,
That's my next question, right? Strange that you should ask that. My next question is, how do I know what to look for, though? So you said that I'm looking for the root account should not have logged onto my system, or
Sure.
maybe I'm looking
Just
for,
one
I don't
activity.
want port 80. What if somebody else decides that I don't want this port? Or what if there's a bad website that I don't want my instances going to? Do I now have an entire department that's supposed to keep track of all this stuff and write all these Lambda functions and CloudWatch events that keep track of all these bad things that happen? New bad things keep coming up every
Things
day.
crop up all the time, yes. So we've got the insight. We know who to notify, but you kind of have to know whether that event is good or bad. You have to have the analysis portion, right? Well, that's where we've got GuardDuty.
I was just going to say, couldn't we come up with something that would do this for you?
Absolutely.
Couldn't we come up with something that would do the analysis for you, that would look and do continuous monitoring of your systems? Something that would have event response and automatic remediation. Now, I said automatic on accident on purpose there. We want automated remediation, okay? Automatic remediation would be this magic thing decides what it wants to do afterwards. We're not exactly there. You still want to make some decisions, right, on what you want to do.
We're basically compressing down the analysis portion. So GuardDuty is doing the heavy lifting for you there.
And it's going to...
We're still going to respond and remediate with Lambda, but we're just using GuardDuty and do the heavy lifting for the analysis portion.
Gotcha. So with GuardDuty, we pick accounts, just like we did before with CloudTrail, but we're going to say, this account, that account, this account, I want this to be monitored. Do I have to then turn on CloudTrail events, VPC Flow logs, and now DNS query logs?
Well, you can't enable DNS query logs, but the beauty is you don't have to enable CloudTrail or VPC Flow logs now, because GuardDuty will be able to analyze those logs for you. So if you don't even have them enabled, GuardDuty is making that analysis for you. Interesting.
And then GuardDuty's got this set of things, or is that going to flow, modify over time? Threats and things like that. Continuously adding things.
We're continuously adding based on threats, so we have new capability with GuardDuty and what we're able to analyze.
Interesting. So you can see we've got that, and then we're going to leverage the actions. What would I leverage the actions on? We could do it on something as simple as, okay, when low comes in, do this. When medium comes in, do that. When high comes in, do that. But we'll see in a minute we can get a little bit more granular on that. We're not going to get completely into the weeds on that, but we'll talk a little bit about some of the similar things you talked about. But let's go over the three of these real quick. Low, believe it or not, means that something bad happened and we stopped it. And the reason that's low is, let's say that I want to block a particular port, okay? And it's being blocked 6 billion times. I don't want to be notified every single time. It's a low priority. I want to know about it.
Yeah, say port 22.
Medium means that something bad has happened and we have not blocked that, okay? The actual wording there, suspicious activity. This might be bad. And then high, which you're going to want to capture, okay, means that the resource has been compromised. Somebody has taken over your EC2 instance and is Bitcoin mining that.
One of many things, yeah.
Many things. We don't want to get into the weeds on that, but many things have happened. So let's look at an example of that. And you can see here, similar to what we talked about before, but this is what GuardDuty is going to now bubble up. And what we have here is an EC2 instance in an account that is protected by GuardDuty. And GuardDuty has detected that this EC2 instance is in communication with a DNS domain that is probably not somewhere you're going to want your EC2 instance to go. So again, this is a medium. Remember, what's medium? There we go. Medium, suspicious activity deviating from the norm. Okay? So this EC2 instance is deviating from the norm. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's been taken over. There could be a very good reason for that. There we go. I'm going to get things such as the resource ID, the time that it happened, the severity level, the region that it had happened in, how many things that it happened to.
And there's additional information as well that isn't displayed here, but yes, there's a lot of information you can pull here.
A lot of information that you're going to get. What could we do with that? These things called CloudWatch events again. Now, let's clarify here. I'm going to go and configure CloudWatch to capture GuardDuty.
So you're going to configure CloudWatch events within CloudWatch. CloudWatch is our monitoring service, and within there we've got the function of CloudWatch events.
And so within CloudWatch events, I can say things such as, every time a medium happens, page me. Every time a high happens, page me. A medium happens, send me an email. But that is response. What we're showing you here is remediation. I won't slip all the way back to the slides, but imagine, if you will, that this EC2 instance that is going and doing something it should not, maybe that's something that I have decided. When that happens in this particular environment, I was just talking to a customer about this, and they were talking about their dev environment, which would be perfect for this, where that instance, it's not a production environment, I'm going to instantly take it, move it over into a security group that has access to nothing else, send an email to the owner of that account and say, your instance is now quarantined, okay? Please contact me once I wake up, because I'm not getting paid at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I will see about getting your instance taken care of in the morning.
Exactly.
So I'm going to turn it over to Chris, talk a little bit about DevSecOps. I'm going to take a peek, because I promised you I would not take you over, because the bar will open. Plenty of time for Chris to talk to you about DevSecOps.
So we talked a lot about the historical, about getting insight. We talked about remediation, but you're probably all, I came for a DevSecOps talk. So let's talk a little bit about DevSecOps.
Sounds like a buzzword to me.
Well, let's define it. But first, let's talk about DevOps. We are probably all very familiar with DevOps. We probably have talked about DevOps to some degree. But what is DevOps really? To me, DevOps, it comes down to you build it, you own it. You are instilling a culture of ownership, accountability. You're working with different team members, different departments, so you're working together instead of being siloed. And DevOps comes back down, if we think about the 3 ways, right? We've got the culture of innovation, we've got that feedback loop, and we've got that system level thinking. And that's, roughly DevOps. But DevOps really is an idea. So how does DevSecOps apply to this? So this here, we've got a pipeline. Some of you may or may not use a pipeline. Your developers probably do. They're probably committing code. They're probably going through the cycle, or some variation of it. So how does security fit into this?
Well, I just secure things afterwards, right? I mean, the developers, they create it.
We can be reactive.
And then they hand it over to Ops, and Ops takes and makes it secure.
Toss it to Ops?
That would be bad?
Well, let's get proactive about that. So let's get proactive.
Let's get proactive.
So we talked about reactive stuff. So here's one example where we can inject security into our pipeline. We're being proactive with our security. Do all your developers, do they need access to all the builds? Probably not. So put security on there. Put auditing. Put logging. When you're going through your code and your commit, why should we wait to find a threat after it gets to production? Let's do that in non-prod, or let's do that in QA. Let's do a automated threat assessment. Again, stay proactive. Maybe you want to scan your AMI for hash keys. Are your developers using the correct AMIs? Build that in. Automate that.
This sounds like it's planning for security initially. I always thought DevSecOps was just making sure my code was secure. So you're telling me that I'm putting security in this life cycle here so that I don't have to worry about it as much when it gets into production.
It gets back to that culture philosophy of being proactive and breaking down barriers. So it's not just securing your pipeline, although that is a very critical function for DevSecOps, but it's also things like DDoS protection and automating that and being proactive. So when we talk about security, it's not just a secure pipeline, although that's very critical. It's also, in this example, we've got DDoS protection using our AWS WAF service, but we're also using that wonderful tool service, Lambda again, and Lambda is basically ingesting. So we've got a situation here where we can ingest known bad actors who've made it to some list. There's plenty of third-party lists out there. You can import that now using Lambda, put that into WAF, so your WAF has now got the latest and greatest lists to protect you. So we can dynamically protect ourselves. And on top of that,
go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, WAF scales. It's no longer a device. As Bill talked through some of the historical challenges, it was always a device. You were limited by the constraints of the device, not with WAF.
Interesting. When I think of Lambda, you talk about remediation, I would think, okay, somebody's attacking my website, DDoS is on that, just like the example you gave before. So I've got Lambda, so I get Lambda to come in and just shut off my website.
You can do that. You can isolate it. You can do a lot of things.
Do that. But you're saying you're using Lambda in the other direction.
Exactly.
Now I'm using Lambda to be proactive.
We're being proactive now. We're basically ingesting lists and putting that into an IP list rule within WAF.
And keeping that WAF up to date, and keeping that up to date so that, interesting. So now I'm using Lambda going back in the other direction so that I don't have to use Lambda to shut off Amazon.com.
So we're not responding, we're being proactive about that.
Interesting. Okay.
So again, we've talked a little bit about DevOps, a little about DevSecOps, and again, it's that culture of experimentation. You want to experiment, try things. So we've talked about getting insight and gaining that insight. Without the insight, you can't take action. Without that insight,
what were the things that you were doing in monitoring? There were logs. I swear there was some sort of logs you were looking at.
We were looking at CloudTrail logs.
CloudTrail logs. Interesting.
VPC Flow logs.
And
CloudWatch logs.
Okay.
So you've got the insight. We've also talked about once you get all that insight, once you get all those logs, you got to analyze it. You got to make a decision.
And then I analyze it with.
In our example, we use GuardDuty.
Gotcha. Is that all I can do, though? Could I analyze it with something else? Could I write my own? Could I roll my own? Could I use something else?
You certainly could roll your own. You could
Exactly.
get an analysis engine, maybe on the marketplace.
Look at it. You know, if it's something small, I could do something small and just look at it and do a search on my S3 buckets, things like that.
Sure. You can go into the console. You can go into your S3 bucket. There's many ways to do it.
This is where you page me.
This is where I'm paging at 3 a.m.
All right. 3 o'clock in the morning.
So we're going to page Bill. So we talked about the monitoring. We talked about the analyzing, and then responding. And we kind of go through this evolution, this cycle of DevSecOps. And at the other end, we've got remediate. We've remediated that instance, right? So we've got all this stuff in green, which is a reactive posture. And then we've got our blue, which is the proactive posture. We talked about things like the secure CI/CD pipeline. We talked about dynamic threat assessments. Build it into your pipeline. We talked about automated DDoS protection. Again, we're being proactive. So automate as much as you possibly can, and try to focus your time on the right. We want to focus on the right, the blue. And we want to try to automate as much as possible on the green, so we have that time to focus on the things in the blue. And again, we talked about DevOps culture, DevSecOps culture. What is that? It's the culture of philosophy. So it's all underpinned by this philosophy of ownership, accountability, breaking down barriers, and understanding business outcomes. And we talked about automation. Automation's key.
So if I do more of that stuff in the blue, I get less of the stuff in the green?
Well, hopefully,
do I get page less?
we can automate the things on the left, and we can
okay.
get page less, and then have time to focus things on the blue.
But if I have this DevSecOps, don't I just not need to monitor?
Always need to monitor, Bill.
Always need to monitor, analyze, respond, and remediate. Okay, a little bit, as long as I don't get paged.
Great. And then we talked about the automation piece too, right? So we talked about Lambda, leverage Lambda, because Lambda's going to help you automate that. You can build that in. You can schedule it. You can do it event-based. And we talked about tools, some of our tools that we talked about. We've got services like VPC, CloudTrail. We've got GuardDuty. We've got AWS WAF. Now, at AWS, we have a lot of tools out there to help you with these challenges, to help you with your security outcomes for your business with these services. And we're going to continue to innovate with those security-focused services so that you can build secure outcomes for your business.
So let me wrap it up for us. Let me see the time. I think we did pretty good on getting everyone to the bar. Oh, we got a few more minutes left. Not quite yet. I know everyone's wanting to go to happy hour. I talked about traditional security. Okay, I think I've learned a lot from Chris and cloud security. He's helped out a lot with that. We did talk about Amazon GuardDuty. It is not the only option, but it is a tremendous option that you should look into for enabling on your accounts for doing the, what does GuardDuty do again?
Analyzing threats.
Analyzing threats. Gotcha. Analyzing threats, and then I can respond to them hopefully using Lambda.
Lambda, exactly.
Actually, remediate them using Lambda. Respond using Lambda.
Have GuardDuty work for you. Do the heavy lifting, and then use Lambda to respond.
And then Chris gave a nice little overview, small overview of a new buzzword, DevSecOps, that you see a lot. Okay, DevSecOps, how we integrate that into our CI/CD pipelines so that we can proactively work on security as opposed to being so reactive and getting security earlier. Okay, moving things over so that it's earlier and earlier. Okay? Last thing I want to leave you with is, and you can tell we edited this after Werner talked this morning. Okay, so saw that was perfect. Pace of innovation meets pace of protection through automation. I thought it was a fantastic quote, smack on what we were trying to talk about in this presentation, which is you don't have to move slow to be secure. Okay? You can move fast and be secure and meet your pace of innovation. Okay? I'm going to give you a little bit of time back to go to happy hour. Thank you everyone for this week. Please give us a review on the app.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.